I'm wondering if the Tim Waltz pick surprised you.
It did, because it's so in your face from a standpoint of him being a radical leftist right along with Kamala Harris. I mean, she did nothing to moderate herself. And I think the play they're making here is they're unashamedly radical leftists, and they're pretty well counting on the news media not to ask them tough questions, not to really look into their past. I think it's pretty revealing what in just a day we found out about Governor Waltz and his record. For example, just up and quitting the National Guard when he was called to Iraq, rather than lead his men that he was supposed to be a command sergeant major of, and then he falsified his record as well. So he's got a radical left record, as does Kamala Harris, but they're going to try and keep that on the down low and not let the American people really understand who they are.
Are you surprised, and here we are, the start of day 19 since Joe Biden dropped out of the race, are you surprised that given how historic that moment was a little more than 2 weeks ago, something we haven't seen since 1968 and LBJ, are you surprised that Kamala Harris hasn't done a sit-down interview yet?
No, not at all. And by the way, I pretty well predicted this. I was doubting that Joe Biden would be their candidate way back 2 summers ago. And I said, whoever they choose to replace him on the ticket will be put on a pedestal. They'll be crowned the new Messiah. And that's how the news media would treat the new candidate. That's exactly what they're doing with Kamala Harris. So again, they're going to cover for her. Remember, Joe Biden won as a candidate campaigning from his basement. So the press shielded him. They've also covered up his abysmal record and her record as borders are. They don't talk about the border crisis. They by and large haven't. They try and downplay the 40-year high inflation that caused your dollar to now be worth only 83 cents. The war on fossil fuels, the weakness that has really set the world in flames. So again, the news media will not cover this campaign honestly. Instead, they'll cover up for Kamala Harris and Tim Waltz.
If the election was tomorrow, Senator, does Kamala Harris win?
I hope not. Listen, I've run 3 tough races in Wisconsin. The polls were never right. I always knew they were going to be very close, and they really have been close races. So, again, a lot's going to depend on, is the news media going to be forced to cover this race more honestly? They probably won't be. They're pretty insular themselves. But if the American people actually knew who Kamala Harris was, who Tim Waltz was, I have a hard time believing they could ever win.
Joe Biden is alive. We can confirm that. He's clearly not well. That's why he dropped out of this race. Suddenly, that story has dropped out of the news cycle. He sat down with CBS this morning a day ago to give the first interview that he's done since dropping out of the race. It will air apparently on Sunday. Nobody's asking the hard questions for whatever reason, particularly of Kamala Harris. What did she know? Was she complicit in this cover-up? Take a listen to what Biden had to say yesterday.
That there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025.
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. It'll have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes. They're putting people in place in states that they're going to count the votes, right?
Nonsensical. I want to get your reaction to what he was trying to say there, but also, what's the fear that maybe the October surprise is they're going to force Joe Biden to resign the office before Election Day and Kamala's president on November the 5th?
Well, first of all, his initial reaction was the true answer. There was a reason they boarded up stores in major cities prior to the 2020 election. It wasn't in case of a Joe Biden victory. That was the case Donald Trump won. So that they were anticipating a similar rise to what we saw during the summer of 2020, which the news media also downplays. I mean, it's the violent extremists in this country come from the left, Antifa, BLM. Those are the people that sparked more than 570 riots that injured 2,000 law enforcement individuals, caused $2 billion worth of damage, a few dozen people dead. That came from the left. And so that was the most honest answer. Yeah, my guess, he's got a ruling cabal there inside the White House. We're not exactly sure who's running this country, but they'll run it into the ground further over the next few months.